Hey, thanks for joining us online. I'm sitting here with Pastor Jeremiah Stingle. He and a team from the church at Chapel Hill just came back from Haiti, and I wanted him to be able to share a little bit of that experience with you. Pastor Jeremiah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the trip and what you guys were doing there in Haiti?
Well, we took a team from the church here with about 13 people from our church, went down there and served for a week. It was a really, really cool opportunity to be with the church there in Haiti, to see what God's doing, and just be a part of the ministry that's taking place there. One of the coolest things was, God used each one of the team members to, impact somebody there with the gospel, with the message, children. It was really cool, but also that each person came back with something that God did in their heart, as well as not only the ministry they were able to offer to other people. So it was a really, really great experience.
Good, and I know that our church has a special relationship with Pastor Forges there, and I know recently we were able to actually purchase a tent for them. Well, how's Pastor Forges doing? How's the church on the rock? And how are they using the tent?
Well, it was really cool because we got to see their former church building that they've recently, fixed up a little bit. But when the earthquake happened, the church building was damaged, and they were no longer able to even have people come inside the building because they didn't want it to fall down just in case there was another earthquake and things like that. And so they didn't have a place to have church. And so when our church found out about it, we were able to raise the funds to purchase a very, very large tent for them to meet in, as well as send it down with all the shipping costs, a container to rent and everything to get that tent down there. And it was really cool to see the church meeting in that tent, because that's where they meet every week for their church services. Wow. As well as while we were there, they were having this 1 week long revival where they had a 6 a.m. prayer meeting, they had a 12 noon worship service, and then an evening service as well. And so they had a group of people meeting in there 6 a.m., noon, and in the evening as well, which kind of corresponded with our times of prayer here.
Yeah.
And it was just cool to see that tent just packed with people. In the morning it wasn't completely filled, but at noon and at the evening service it was a completely full house. In fact, in the evening services they had people spilling all the way out. They had seating kind of outside the tent. And so at the evening services, they were saying that they had upwards of 1,800, 2,000 people.
Wow.
Just crammed around that tent, just hearing the message of the gospel. It was just an awesome, awesome experience.
Well, it's exciting to hear about what God is doing, not just here in our community, but on the other parts of the world there. And especially for a tent. You don't think about a tent being utilized so much. Glad to hear that they're making that happen there. Well, with the earthquake, how's the nation doing? How are they getting things back together? I know we've seen it on the media a good bit, but you had a firsthand experience there. What kind of condition is the countryside still in?
I was never there before the earthquake. There was just huge need in that country before the earthquake happened, and that's why it was such a devastating earthquake, is because the infrastructure for the country wasn't able to manage any kind of emergency response. And so there's still just literally, thousands of tents. There could be upwards of 10,000 tents. I don't know how many tents, but I remember seeing communities driving by and just seeing a whole area of just tents set up, like tents that you and I would go camping in if we wanted to spend a weekend in a tent. And there's people who actually live in these tents, and it was just really sobering to see this at very, very hot weather. And, obviously with a tent, you don't have any kind of plumbing, you don't have any kind of electricity. Wow. And so just large numbers of people, in some of the larger areas, they had porta potties set up. Mm-hmm. So, and you can imagine that they probably don't get those things tended to like they would here. And so it was very, very difficult to see. In some of the rural communities that we were able to visit, there's people who have lived their entire lives in these small communities without water, without electricity. It was very, very sobering, and it was very, very interesting that happened. So.
I know on a trip like this, we go to serve, but it's oftentimes, yes, we get to minister, but God does something special in our heart. Was there anything like that for you, or what was your main takeaway from this trip?
One of the biggest things for me is when we went to this rural community, and we went to the school that they have there. It was almost like, back in the pioneer days where they had a schoolhouse, and all the children from the community would come to the one place to receive their education. And this room, it could not have been bigger than 20 feet by 12 feet.
Wow.
It was a very small building, and they probably had 70 kids in this room. No lie, I mean, it was packed in there. And they were singing some songs, and they had like a triangle drawn on the wall and stuff, and a square, and they had some letters from the alphabet that was there, and they had children of all different ages. And with a 2-year-old daughter myself, who I've been learning shapes with and showing triangles and learning colors and stuff, I was interacting with some of the children, trying to point out and get them to teach me in Creole what each of these words were and stuff. But I think there was just one teacher that was there, and it was just so heartbreaking to see just a condition that there's some people in this world who have no idea of the luxuries that I'm able to enjoy every day, and just the level of callousness that builds up in me just from experiencing everything I want all the time. I have access to everything that I could possibly ever need.
Yeah.
At any moment, I have access to it, and these people don't have the things that I count as necessities for my life. I went back after visiting that village, went back to where we were staying, and the cook who was preparing our food prepared a traditional Haitian meal with some rice and beans, and there was this one spice in there that I'm just not real fond of. And I was thinking as I was eating that, how I'm like, I wish I had something else to eat. And then it just kind of hit me, and I was like, man, these people that I just went and gave some food to and stuff, they would be more than happy to have this. And it just really broke my heart, and something that's going to stick with me for a long time.
Yeah, what a great reminder to not take for granted all of the things that we have here in the United States and the blessings that we have. One final question: how could we as a church family continue to pray for Pastor Forges, the Church on the Rock, and the nation of Haiti?
Great question. Pastor Forges is very clear in the vision of what God sent him there to do, and that's to reach the lost people that are there. There is a piece of land that they currently have the tent set on because their church building got damaged, and so they're like across the street, kind of this field area where they've got some gravel down, and beyond that field, they're kind of renting that field right now, but beyond that is an additional probably 20 or 30 acres of land that he would like to be able to purchase, and he's believing that God is going to provide that money. I think he told me the figure around $400,000 for them to purchase that land. It has a house currently on it, and it has some other things, but it's right next to this very busy, actually paved road, which is very uncommon there. So it's a very busy area of Port-au-Prince, prime location, with land, location. So it would just be a huge blessing. So if you're praying for something, pray that God could give the Church on the Rock that land, that somebody would step forward and want to purchase that, or the landowner would give it over. I mean, there's just so many ways that God could provide in that way, but just continue to pray for the people as well in the nation, just the extreme poverty that they're living in, that God would just have mercy, and the children, children shouldn't have to deal with some of the situations that they're facing. So, I mean, just huge needs that you could pray for.
Good. Well, Pastor Jeremiah, thank you for serving and for going. I love hearing about what God is doing there and has done through you and the ministry there. Just continue to keep us updated as you hear, and we'll post things. Again, thanks for joining us online, and as you heard from Pastor Jeremiah, continue to pray for Pastor Forges, continue to pray for the folks of Haiti, and we'd love to hear from you. Maybe if you have a family or relatives, I know some of our church family does, how are they doing? How are things going there? Well, God bless you. Have a great week, and remember, don't take for granted the things that we have here that so many are doing without.